Hello, everyone, and welcome to War and Literature, our course English 1120X. I'm your professor, Tim Wilson. I'm a professor here at the University of Ottawa, and this is the first lecture. Tonight, we're going to go over some basic logistics for the course. So we're going to go over expectations, the readings. You'll need to cover the assignments, the final exam, these types of things. So before we get into that, though, I'll just let you know a little bit about myself, so you know what to expect from me. And as I said, I'm Tim Wilson. I'm a professor here at the Department of English, and my specialization is Renaissance literature. So that includes authors such as William Shakespeare, who you've probably heard of, and I also specialize in literary theory. So that's the theorization, philosophical speculation on how we interpret texts or methodologies for properly trying to understand texts. So that's my academic background. In addition to my academic career, I also am a public servant. So I work in the Government of Canada. I'm the Associate Vice President at an organization called the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. So that organization supports research into the social sciences and humanities, as well as graduate studies in those disciplines. In addition to all those professional duties, my number one duty is being a spouse and a father. So that takes up a lot of my time and my concentration. It's a big part of my identity. I have two boys who are 11 and 7. And I mention that because you'll probably get a lot of examples if I'm talking about texts and I'm trying to explain what it might mean, examples of my own experiences playing video games or ball hockey out in the street with the kids. So bear with me there if that's too far removed from your own lived experience at this point. So without further ado, as I said, we want to get into the logistics tonight. So what we'll cover at the beginning here, and I'll share my screen. We'll look at what you can find on the Brightspace page, okay? If I can find that. Okay, can I get a thumbs up if we see the Brightspace page here? Thank you, Melody. So we see here, and hopefully everyone can connect to this page. You have my contact information there, the Zoom meeting link. You're going to, as I indicate here, and we'll go over this when we talk about the assignments a bit later, but this is where you're going to be posting your assignments. And you can also find your marks up here if you go to your grades there. So when those are completed, you'll have your grades there. And for the first couple of assignments, you're going to go over to the left here, and there's the discussion forums. So for assignment 1, you're going to be posting a thread there, and we'll talk a bit about that later. To the Brightspace page. There we go. So you can also find that there's a link to the syllabus here, and we'll be going over the syllabus, and a link to the course website. So I'll go to the course website now as well, if I can get it. So this is the course website. In addition to the Brightspace page, just because I'm not able to put lecture videos up there on the Brightspace page and through this medium. So what you'll find here, if you scroll down, is for each week, relevant material. So for each lecture, things that you might want to look at. So for tonight, there's the course syllabus and assignments. And as they become available, you'll also have a link to the video for the lecture, and I'll record them. You'll see that So second lecture is already recorded there, because Mondays will be live and Wednesdays will be pre-recorded. And the other thing you'll find is once we get there, so next week, links to the readings. You won't have any readings that you have to purchase. If you want to own that material, I encourage you to. I'm pretty old school. I like reading a book, but if for whatever reason, whether it's financial or what have you, if you don't want to purchase them, you don't have to, and there are links to the online material here. So for January 19th, you'll be asked to read book 1 of the Iliad. Okay, so I'll just click there and I'll show you. So people can see right now the title page of the Iliad, right? Can I? Good. So what I would do here is I would go to the contents, Homer's Iliad, book 1. So there's bookmarks on the left there, and you'll be asked to read that book 1 of the Iliad, as I said. So that's what you can find. Links to the videos lecture videos as they come, the reading material. Also, this link, so this link will be a lecture to the video when it's there, but there will be also a link to the actual PowerPoint slides that I use in the lectures. So here, for instance, if I were to click on that, you'd get a PDF of the actual lecture notes, okay? So it's good to check that out. That's the course website. Now let's go to the syllabus. Hopefully I can, yeah, there it is. So again, we have my contact information. As indicated here, the office hours, obviously we're not going to meet in an office, but if what we'll do is set up a Zoom meeting to meet at our mutual convenience. So and here's my warning to people, because this will sometimes happen, an assignment will be due, you will have the essay or the final exam, it's due tomorrow, right? And I get an email that night, can we meet? That's tough. I'm busy, you're busy. And so give at least 24 hours for me to respond, and then for us to book a time. So it's going to take a few days. But also, even if you want to interact with a question, let's say if you want to email with a question, don't make it 2 hours before the assignment due date. Give it at least 24 hours, and make the question specific. Okay, so that's the other thing I'll sometimes get is a question the assignment's due tomorrow. Professor, I have a question about the assignment. I'm going to write on Homer, and I'm not sure what to write about. So really articulate, kind of narrow down what a specific question that you have. You've worked out what you're going to write about, what you're writing about, and you just have a very specific question about how to treat this. So it's a day before the assignment's due is a little too late to be starting with first principle questions. So that all those caveats being said, I'm there. Do email me with questions, and I'll help as much as possible. And although those caveats were just there to help you really focus and get the best help from me as possible. For the course description, I'll just read it quickly. So it's War and Literature. It's this is not the course description. This is me right now, but I think hopefully we'll find it an interesting topic. I would say, as I thought about this course, along with maybe love, probably war, conflict are the two primary drivers of a lot of literature. People are either falling in love or else they're hating one another and killing one another, right? So it's a primary driver of a lot of stories and primordial stories in literature throughout the ages, in film today. So as I said, hopefully we are able to draw some of those connections. So the description, war has profoundly shaped human history and experience. The history of war presents us with the specter of unspeakable carnage and death. War forces us to confront our human finitude and mortality in a way that the life of peace does not. And literary narrative is an important means by which we shape our understanding of the meaning of war and of our finite human existence. So the literary tradition provides various historical attempts to find meaning in the face of the suffering and loss of life resulting from war. And in the course, we're going to explore ways works of literatures have charted paths for this understanding of the meaning of the suffering and loss resulting from war. We're going to begin with classical works of literature, so literature from the ancient Greek and Roman period, wherein war arises as an arena in which one's life can be defined by glory, honor, and duty. We will then read works of literature that are representative of a modern experience of war, and by modern, I mean modernity, a very broad sense from about 1500 to the present. So in that experience, perhaps war becomes ultimately meaningless and bereft of any higher significance. So the course goals is development of critical reading skills, coherent discourse, the ability to use acknowledged sources, and yeah, and then the rest is kind of, you can't, not repeatable for credit. That's faculty information for you there. Teaching methods, so primarily lecture, but I do encourage you to jump in with questions, and you can signal with a hand or what have you, that if you do have a question. There's also a chat function on Zoom, of course. The assignment schedule and mark breakdown is there. So the first two assignments we'll talk about are fairly straightforward and fairly easy, you know, pretty easy way to get some free marks, if you ask me. And then assignment number 3 is a research essay, which will take a little bit more work, but is not insurmountable. And of course, the final exam. Here, I won't go through it, but here's your reading schedule. This week is, you know, this class, and then the class on Wednesday that I pointed you towards that's already recorded is a thematic introduction to the theme of war and literature. So there's no reading required there. Next week, as I said, I'll ask you to read book 1 of the Iliad. And notice you're not required to read all of the Iliad. You're not required to read all of the Aeneid. I've indicated which books I've asked you to read here. But for Henry V, as we scroll down to March, the expectation is you would read all of that. And then the last book we'll be reading is Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, and the expectation would be that you would read all of that. So it's a short novel. There's no War and Peace in there. I tried to find a way to get War and Peace on there, but it's about 2,000 pages long. It'd be cruel and unusual punishment for you there. So academic policies, assignment submission, the discussion posts and the research essay are due at 5 p.m. on the due date, okay, 5 p.m. And then they're all submitted on the Brightspace platform, which we just looked at. So you're not emailing me, you're not emailing the department secretariat, you're not dropping it off there. Late submissions, you need to have some sort of medical certificate for those. Academic dishonesty, I won't go through the whole spiel. Hopefully you understand that by now, in terms of acknowledging sources, obviously the penalties for plagiarism. This is something that's people go through in other, you've heard this before, right? In other courses, okay, so I won't. And then again, the same for the 4th point there about the sexual violence policy. You know, that should go without saying outside of the course. You know, obviously, you know, let's treat each other with respect. And obviously the university has stringent policies on any accusations around harassment or online harassment, which would be, potentially the form here. The course website we mentioned. Now, the assignments. So I'll try to pull that up. So the first assignment is, again, it's on the instructions are on the Brightspace page. So if we go to the discussion forum, so what you're going to do is you're going to start a thread on this discussion forum, and you're going to post 100 to 150 words. Try to make it cogent, clear, but you're basically giving your thoughts on the readings so far in this when it comes to Homer. So as I phrase it here, post an original interpretation or respectfully respond to someone else's interpretation. Respectfully is the key term here. So what are your high-level impressions of Homer's overall message in the Iliad in terms of the nature of war? And this is worth 15%. And if you follow these parameters and general online etiquette, you'll receive full marks, okay? As I said, it's pretty, an easy one to boost the GPA or whatever. And then similar for assignment 2, except when it comes to Virgil. So that one is on Virgil, okay? Let's see here. So those are the assignments, the first 2 assignments. And I think there's a question from Melody.
Oh, no, there are questions in the chat. So from
Thank you.
Sophia, it's like, for clarification, assignment 1 and 2 are discussion posts and not submitted as PDFs. And then Johanna asked if you would have an example of the assignment.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't see the chats at first.
No worries.
That's great. Thanks, Melody. Yeah, so for the first question from Sophia, 1 and 2, their discussion posts, post them right on that discussion forum, not as PDFs. And do I have an example of an assignment? I don't have an example, but again, it's 100 to 150 words, your impressions. You're going to get 100% if you follow that range. It's something I can understand, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to follow some sort of essay format or anything like that. We'll get to that when it comes to assignment number 3, where we'll be really strict on the essay format. But this one, it's basically give me your impressions. It's kind of, think of it as, you've done the readings and you've spent half an hour, whatever, however long it takes you to write 100 words. Trying to articulate your thoughts on that. It's just a test to force you to do that, so to speak. I hope that's helpful. So if there are no more questions on, so it's follow up from Joanna, like a summary. I wouldn't say a summary because, we're reading fairly long works, right? It would take you more than 100 words to summarize these things. I would, the question is about what's your general impression of what Homer is trying to get at. So through the lectures, we'll talk about it quite a bit. I'm going to make a big deal about trying to find meaning in finite human existence as one way to tackle it. And there's definitely more than 100 words you could talk about there. And so a summary would be, if the way I understand that question, Joanna, would be going through and doing like a plot summary of each book. That would take quite a bit. So less that than a few sentences on. I think the whole book as a whole is really about finding meaning in our finite existence. It's about heroism, and the courage of these warriors, what have you, and I'm sure as we go through the lectures, you'll have your own ways of articulating these things. Okay, great. For course assignment 3, that one will be, loaded as a PDF or a Word document and posted on the assignments tab there. in Brightspace. And here, so we're looking at 1,200 words or so, plus or minus 100 words. So that should be around 4 to 5 pages, double spaced and 12-point font, if that's what you're going with. It's a research essay. So your essay must engage with the arguments of 3 secondary reference works. We're going to have a whole lecture where I go through the expectations and tips and tricks on a research essay, okay? So it's right after the reading break. I also have links here to my essay writing tips and I'll go over them in that lecture, but there's a couple of links there. So essay writing tips, research, write, think, that's about thinking about how to develop a research, let's say, thesis and what that means and how I'm going to go and research it. And then the excellent elements of an excellent academic essay, another document there. There's also sample essays on the web page there, as I note there, so you might want to check those out. The style guide, I'm personally not going to be a big stickler about did the comma go in the right spot or that kind of thing, or did you use MLA, which is called Modern Language Association, versus APA? If you're a psychology student and want to use APA, or if you want to use the Chicago Manual of Style, because that's what your history course is asking you, that's fine. Try to make it consistent, try to make it logical, right? So don't be switching it around, because I'll be looking for the next reference, I'll be looking for it over there, but if it's changed. So it's less how you follow the style and whether every punctuation's there. What's important about the style guide might be elements of writing and when to document and those types of things. So that assignment's worth 30%. I'll just quickly mention the essay topics. You'll want to return to these obviously after reading Henry V. So the research essay will be on Henry V, okay? The first assignment, the discussion post, will be on Homer, and it's due at the beginning of February. The second assignment is on Virgil, which is the second work we're going to read, and I think that's due a couple weeks after the first one. The research essay will be due after the break, and it'll be on Shakespeare. And then Woolf, and we'll talk a bit more about the final exam, but Virginia Woolf, our fourth work that we'll be covering, will be covered in the final exam. So the research essay topics: does Shakespeare represent Henry V as a great military leader? The second, how does Shakespeare's play Henry V present war? Is there an ultimate meaning or significance one can draw from war in terms of individual or national glory, or is it ultimately meaningless? We'll talk a bit about it when we'll talk about research essay, but that one could be tough one. Like now that I'm looking at it, you really have to narrow that down because it's pretty broad. So make sure if you take that's a really broad door I've given you there. So make sure you're going through you pick a lane on that, in that very wide door. It's a mixed metaphor, but you get my point. Third, what's the function of the chorus in Shakespeare's play Henry V? How does the chorus alter our interpretation of the events presented in the play? And then fourth, Shakespeare's play Henry V juxtaposes scenes with English and French aristocracy with English common soldiers. What are some of the effects of this juxtaposition, and how does it affect our interpretation of the ultimate meaning of the play? So these were ones that attempted to guide your thinking. They're fairly broad, and you want to zero in, as I said, on your own thesis and do some research on it. If you have one that your own idea, once you've come and we've talked about Henry V, we've read it, that's not on this list, let me know, just so that we can make sure that it's kind of focused enough and and we'll, make sure you can do it on that, even if it's not on this list. Now the final exam. So we don't know the date of the final exam yet, but it'll also be done on Brightspace, right? So you'll be doing it, basically a take-home exam. And I'm telling you the exam right now. So this is the exam, right? What's missing are a couple of quotes, but you can basically prepare for the exam now. So you're going to have a date. You're going to, it's going to be much like your essay, except it's going to be, in this case, 2 parts. You're going to write it up and submit it on Brightspace. So the first section is, again, Homer and Virgil, and then you'll be provided with an excerpt from one of those works, and you'll be asked to describe the meaning of the passage in relation to the overall message of the poem. So both sections, the response should be about 2 to 3 pages, 500 to 750 words. I'm going back up to the top here. I skipped over this. So it's open book. So obviously you can refer to these works. You can cite them, the primary text or other material. And it's worth 40%. The second section is on Virginia Woolf, and you'll choose one of 2 options. The 2 options will be 2 quotes from secondary sources. So critics who are writing on Virginia Woolf, okay? So the critics will have a statement, Mrs. Dalloway is all about X, and then you'll say either disagree or agree. And, I think this critic really nailed it because of Y, Z, and all the other material you want to refer to in the novel to back up your point. Or maybe you disagree with the point being made by the critic, okay? So you'll have 2 critical statements, reply to one of them. Okay. Now, for both the essay, and for the final exam essay question, those 2 questions, we'll use this grading rubric, okay? So just so you understand the expectations and how you can try to improve, let's say after you do the first assignment. So you'll have this scale. You'll get a scale from 0 to 3 in terms of how well defined the thesis and the position of the overall essay is. And again, we're going to have a whole lecture where we're going to talk about examples of that. And then argumentation, we're going to talk about, how to make sure that the arguments are linked to the thesis. And again, you'll have 0 to 3. So I think we have a question in the chat here. For the final, we have a period of a few days to complete, or will we be expected to complete it in one day? Yeah, that's a good question. I think you're going to have a few days, so you'll have the actual final questions posted on the Brightspace page well in advance. Okay. And then, so we've got thinking and analysis. That's about the thesis. We've got argumentation, making sure the arguments of the essay are linked to the thesis and that they're logical, so to speak. The organization, that's kind of speaking to the progression and logic of the arguments that I just mentioned. And then the last 2 are tougher to some extent to perfect without practice, right? So there's style and ensuring that the writing is clear and that there's a good flow to the actual the sentences, so to speak. And then there's mechanics. Well, the mechanics, I said, I think style is tough to improve without practice, but mechanics should come if you just are diligent about it, right? Like a lot of the software now is going to flag errors for you. So if you kind of are diligent enough to poke at those, a lot of the software misses some of the errors I've noticed, but if you at least try to work on that, there's room for improvement there. And that will be, as I said, your kind of guiding thread for the for the marking. So you'll get a mark for each one of those and you'll know where you need to improve for the next time. Okay, so that's the assignments, the essay, the all three assignments, including the essay and the final exam. Are there any other questions about expectations or the readings? Everything's very clear. Okay, so I'm looking forward to again going through this with you. I hope everyone is pumped as I am. The readings are not onerous, I don't think, right? Like I've tried to really keep them streamlined in terms of readings, but do them so that we're on track. And then the lectures will make a lot more sense, okay? Because I know there's a tendency, I've been there. I remember, it was a long time ago, but I remember undergrad and it would kind of piled up like this graph of GDP in the 20th century, you know, like, and all the readings would pile up towards the final exam, you know, so because the readings are so light, the first two discussion forum things are not heavy assignments. Try to keep up with the readings so that the lectures make sense and that you can really concentrate on those big assignments, the essay and the final exam. So that would be my advice if I were to take the course. All right, everyone. So I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Professor.
I'm gonna-